Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me just say that we get it. Personal development can be hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Project Endure has been on a mission to create a supportive and inspiring community of people, all striving to be better together. Head down to the link in the show notes and join the Hard Things Club so that we can do hard things together. And if you're already a member, invite a friend and spread the love. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 42. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and I say this every single week, but we truly have a very special guest tonight. My good friend and probably my first mentor in life, Chris Flores. Chris, how you doing, man?
What's up, brother? How are you?
I am amazing. It's been a while since we last connected, but I'll be honest, I think about you often. You were, for context, my athletic trainer in high school, and that's how we first met, right?
A long time ago, man. So long ago.
It's wild to think. So I started high school in 2008, and 2008 is 14 years ago, which is crazy.
Wow.
I was just
crazy.
A little kid. So
was I. I just graduated college.
Yeah, it's wild. And you know what? Before I let you introduce yourself, I kind of want to share a little bit of the progression, I guess, of our relationship for context. So you were the athletic trainer. I played football. I was on the track team. We got to know each other. You may or may not realize this, but you played such a pivotal role in my development as a young man, specifically by sharing an Eric Thomas video with me in the football locker room. And it was the Succeed as Bad as You Want to Breathe video. That video
I remember that.
Changed my life.
Wow.
So that happened. And then, graduated high school, went to college, transferred back home. I was commuting to Rutgers from my parents' house in Westfield, and then just got involved with everything you were doing with Flow Fitness. And that was really interesting for me because that was the beginning of my social media journey, which has really carried me to many places I never expected. And so for everybody who's been following me for a really long time, everybody knows Joe FlowFit. That was my first Instagram handle.
Yeah.
And that brings us here. You've been doing your thing. I've been doing my thing. I've been looking forward to catching up. But why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, Chris? Because I know a lot's changed since we last spoke.
I will for sure. But one story I want to share before we do that was I distinctly remember, part of your eye journey, right? When one of the hits you took on football and you couldn't see on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. And as an athletic trainer, that's like a scary situation. I mean, I knew you had the eye issue, but sitting on the sidelines with you and experiencing that was definitely one of those moments you never forget as an athletic trainer. But one of the other things I remember is you in the athletic training room trying to crack the code on my phone. And then you were like, "Oh, Chris, I'm so sorry. Like your phone just locked up and I couldn't use my phone for like 5 minutes before I could turn it back on." I'm like, I was so pissed. I was like, dude, stop touching my phone. But it was one of those fun moments as an athletic trainer. So my journey now, I'm at the point where I got 2 kids, just bought a house, a new house. Me and my girl got a house for the 2 boys. We're renting our old house, which is cool. So now it's like landlord / Mr. taking care of the landscaping and proud of my lawn type dad. Have the book out called Build Your Legacy, which if you guys can watch this online, you'll see that in the background. And still working Flow Fitness, working with a company called Animal Flow, where I travel around the world teaching ground-based movement and potentially getting back into athletic training soon. We'll see what happens. But yeah, those are the things I'm up to now, man. Dad life.
Man, yeah, you've got such a youthful spirit. I feel like you must be a really fun dad, but what are some of the take-home lessons that you've learned so far being a dad?
One of the major ones is no one knows what the hell they're talking about. I think that's important for parents because like you get kids and they're like, oh, my kid can't read yet or doesn't speak yet. And someone's going to tell you, do this, do that. We have 2 kids. We've raised them exactly the same. Like when I tell you I'm home a lot, because when I left the job, I've just been home a lot. And I've done the same exact thing with both kids. They're completely different animals. So it's not what obviously some of it's the nature and nurture thing, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't know what soul you're getting, who's coming to you, and they're completely different children. Again, we've raised them almost identical, like from the flashcards to the scheduling to everything, and they're completely different. So that's one of the biggest things is you don't know what the heck, like, no one knows. You never know what you're going to get. And I think the other second take home is the complete opposite, that is you know more than you think. And oftentimes parents like, did you read this book? Did you read that book? There's so much intuition that you have as just a human that's like inside of you. And when you have children, you just have to let that out and stop thinking like some people overthink parenting. Like I have to do this so that my kid becomes Einstein. You have no clue. So you don't know everything and you know more than you think you do.
Yeah, I like both of those. Are you planning on a third, or is that not public knowledge yet?
I wish. We literally can't. So we may adopt. That's something we're talking about, maybe in a couple of years, but we physically can't have another one. So that would have been great. We wanted to, but it wasn't in the cards for us.
Gotcha. You sound pretty at peace with that, or is that something you're still going through right now?
Yeah, I'm at peace with it. It's out of my control. So I had to make peace with it. To give you the long and short of the story, when my second was born, Nicole literally and again, as an athletic trainer, I felt lots of pulses, right? You felt a pulse, when someone's pulse is beating perfectly fine. I was holding Nicole's hand as they took Logan out. She was good. All of a sudden, she made this like gargling sound and her body went ice cold. 0 pulse in my hand. I was sitting there holding her wrist, like shaking her. There was no response. I look at the doctor. I'm like, yo, what? Dude, she's not responding. She's not breathing. There's no pulse. I'm telling him. And within 15 seconds, she took a giant breath and came back to life. Oh my goodness. So for about 10 to 15 seconds, I was a single dad. So after that traumatic experience, and she doesn't remember any of it. She just felt like she was drowning and then woke up. So for me, it was like, you know what, maybe this is not for us. We should probably quit while we're ahead here. And the diagnosis at the end of it was a pulmonary embolism, which normally you die from. So by some chance and miracle, we made it. So we're not going to try that again.
Oh my goodness. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, we already are talking about hard things, so why don't I just ask the question? What's the hardest thing or circumstance that you've ever had to handle in your life? So something out of your control that's happened.
Wow, something out of my control that's happened. I mean, that's definitely one of them. In that situation, the one before it, which it's weird to say because there was another, obviously, when my first son was born, is Nicole was in labor for like 40 hours. Like it was a long time, right? And as a dad, like I wanted to be, like my whole life, all I want to do is be a dad. So to give people context who are listening to this, like literally what I want to do is be a father. That's like my goal in life was to be a dad. And so I'm all excited. We're having our first child. We think everything's going to happen the way nature allows it to happen. So we're going through this process of, she's pregnant. We're doing the counts or whatever. When she starts having contractions, we go to the hospital and they sent us back home. They're like, she's not ready yet. And so we're like, but she's having the contractions. You told us this time apart. I don't remember at this time. It was like 10 minutes apart or something like that. Sent us home. She's having the contractions all night. We go back the next morning. We're like, she's still having all these contractions, whatever. 40 something hours later, the baby's heart rate drops. Oh. And so again, I have zero, like when you say zero control, like there's nothing you can do. You hold her hand and say, breathe, relax. I can't cut her stomach open to get the baby out. So to see his heart rate drops, then it becomes emergency C-section. So they wheel her into the room for the C-section to prep her and get her ready for the birth, or for the C-section. And I'm sitting outside, and all I remember is the doctor walking up to me, and he like strolls in. He's an older dude. He strolls in, and he's like, "Don't worry, it's gonna be fine." And he like puts his hand on my thigh, and to give the people listening context, I'm from like the hood in the South Bronx. Like when you get into this mode of like aggression, where it's like, "Don't touch me, we're about to fight," like you literally, it's almost like you see red, like you just want to hurt everyone around you because you're hurting. And that's what I grew up around. So like in this moment, they're telling me it's going to be fine. I'm like, "Don't talk to me, don't touch me, don't nothing until she comes out with that baby. Like I don't want to speak to any of you." But I was so powerless in that moment that all I can think of was beating the shit out of everybody in that hospital, in that wing, like just getting violent. And it's because it's what I know. That's the only reason I know how to deal with this adversity is to get violent. So I was just sitting there like clenching my fist, and this guy puts his hands on my thigh. And I'm like, if you weren't the doctor and about to deliver this, like something would have happened. So he goes in, and then they finally call me in. Like, I don't know, it was about 10 minutes later. I'm sitting and like, apparently nurses came by and people spoke to me. I don't remember any of it. I didn't say a word. I was just staring straight ahead. I'm like, I have nothing to say to any of you. If she doesn't come out with that baby, I'm going in jail tonight. That's all I can remember thinking in that moment. And luckily I went in, Carter was born, and the rest is history for our first son. But just, I've never felt so powerless in my life. Like complete lack of there's nothing you can do. You're not a surgeon. You're not, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I just remember feeling like, and she's in that room alone. Like when they first prepped her for the surgery, I'm not even with her. So you have this feeling of like, you think you want to be a father and you want to be part of this journey, and there's nothing for you in that moment. So that was probably like one of the hardest 25, 30 minutes of my life. And that's all it was. It felt like it was an eternity, but it really was just 30 minutes maybe from the time they said it's time for C-section, so they got into surgery. But I just remember feeling powerless, and like, if my son does not come out okay, I just knew I wasn't going to make it home that night for sure.
Man, I guess outcome aside and maybe anger aside, do you feel like that powerless 20, 25 minutes left you different than when it found you? Like, did you take anything away from that feeling? Did that stay with you in any way, shape, or form?
For sure. And it like, maybe up to that moment, and maybe it was my profession, athletic training, like we kind of feel like we can deal with any injury, right? Like someone gets hurt, we're the person people call. I'm the person coming to the rescue. My whole life, my mom was my mom was like a nurse. We were the family people ran to for advice and help. So I feel like my whole life I was able to help. That was one of the moments you realize that like how small you are in this, whether you want to believe in the universe, whether you believe in religion, in God's hands, you feel how small you truly are, how little you are. And it was a humbling feeling to be like, anything could have happened. I can't tape his ankle. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't fix it. Like I know how to fix so much, and this thing I couldn't. And I felt so small in that. And it made you this humility with life where like, you never know what's going to happen. Like tomorrow. And I know it sounds so cliche. Oh, tomorrow something happened. People can say that, but when you feel it, you'll never forget that feeling. And it happened that time. And it happened the story I just told you guys for the second birth, where I felt super powerless in those two moments. And it's one of those two times where you want to be the most supportive, the most helpful, the most useful. And I was neither in both those times, right? So it's really a feeling that sticks with you forever.
I had an experience. Actually, it was probably senior year of college. So let's say 2016. I got in a car accident in Garwood, New Jersey, and a car ran a stop sign. We hit kind of at the front corners of our car. They were in a small car. I was in a Jeep, and my car rolled 1.5, 2 times. I don't remember. Completely totaled. And I'll never forget, I held the steering wheel tight, airbag came out. When I talk about it, I can still taste and smell the powder from the airbag. I'll never forget that. And I was so sad like in those 2-3 seconds that felt like 30 minutes, my heart was in my stomach. I thought I was not going to make it out. And I thought I'm never going to see the people I love ever again. And then the car stopped rolling. I realized I was still alive, strapped in, looked up to the sky. My driver's side door was up to the sky. Somebody hopped on my car, helped me out. I stood on the sidewalk, patted myself down in disbelief, and I was totally okay. And I looked at my car, and that feeling is something I'll never forget. And it was similar in a way where I was just so humbled, right? Nothing else mattered other than the fact that like I was safe, I was alive, my family was still alive, like everybody was good. And I wish I could just bottle that up. And on the mornings where I don't remember, or where I feel I get upset easily, or I'm frustrated with something, I wish I could just like smell that and just be like, you know what, dude, you're alive and it's okay today. You know what I mean?
I know 100% because it gives you a sense of, and it's weird how on the back end of that, there's this euphoria of life, this brightness of everything's bright, everything's wonderful, life is amazing. And I think that's part of why you want to bottle it up, because you want to drink that and be like, life is great. I still have my health. I still have my family. Like you just want to keep that with you forever, but it's not the way we live.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was actually watching an Inky Johnson video this morning, who again was somebody who I found through that initial video that you shared with me. And his stuff just hits me like none other. And he was talking about how the most underrated thing in the world is just leaving our house every day and coming back, and how we take that for granted every single day. And I feel like you would have good insight into what I'm about to ask next, because you're one of the most wisdom filled people that I know, Chris. So I think that hard things, difficult situations, the adversity we face in life, it adds richness, right? It adds richness to the human experience, right? You can't have the sweet without the bitter. And I'm curious what your take is on all that, specifically like when you're having a bad day, when things are not going right, whether that's relationship wise, business wise, or just life in general. How do you, or how can you maybe like take a step back and realize like, this is part of my life experience. It might be hard. It might be painful. I might not want to be here, but this is adding richness to my life. And maybe it's a positive in the long run.
Yeah, I'll give you two things that come to mind when you ask that. One was I actually went to Eric Thomas's like first ever live presentation in Connecticut. This is again going back probably 2009. And one of the speakers he had come out earlier was talking about, and I wrote this in my book, there's no privilege without pressure. Mm. And so if you want a certain position in life, you want to reach a certain level, there's an enormous amount of pressure that comes with it. And the higher level you want to reach, the more pressure there comes with it. So if you think of, it's easy to pick on pro athletes, it's easy to pick on celebrities, but you don't realize the pressure they go through. And I think one of the best people who articulates it the best is someone like Dave Chappelle. If you listen to his stuff, he's really telling you how hard it is to be famous. Like there's no fly by night fair weather person makes it to that level without dealing with an enormous amount of scrutiny and adversity to get there. So I think that's one thing, that knowing, all right, if you want a certain thing, there's going to be those days where you get your ass kicked and you're feeling down, you feel like you're not worth it. Those are the days where it's the most important to be consistent, right? Mm-hmm. To push through and do the things that need to be done for whatever it is that you want to reach. And as an athlete, you know that those those days where it's tough and you're exhausted, those are the days that matter most. And so if you want to be great, there's a lot of pressure that comes with it. That's one thing that pops into mind when you ask that question. The second thing is, I think Les Brown was someone I heard say this, is that when times are tough, those are your character building days. It's really what develops your character. It's like, okay, you say you're such and such, and there's a lot of people who claim to be motivational, who claim to be inspirational, and they have their dark days. And when the dark days come, and I'm not judging how people deal with it, when those dark days come, they cower away and they run from it. Yeah. And then there's people, when those dark times come, they're like, okay, this is what the universe is giving me. This is what, again, God given me, whatever your belief is. How am I going to overcome this?
Mm.
And then for someone like myself, that's what I'll use as content. I'll use that, like, if I'm feeling a certain way someday, I may not do it that day, but I'll be like, damn, I feel down on myself, or I don't feel worthy. I don't feel this. And then I use that a couple of days later as a speech I'll give on Instagram or whatever. But those are the character building days. Those, if you really say you're something, you got to be that all the time. And I think that's one of the hardest things for most people is when the times are tough, seeing that there will be a light at the end of that tunnel, but you got to go through the darkness first.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And I'm curious from your perspective, have you always felt compelled to share with the world those more difficult experiences and opening up and being vulnerable? And if so, why? And if not, when did you become comfortable enough to do that?
I'll be 100% honest. I have zero idea why I feel so comfortable sharing my dark. I like there's not a moment I can say that I didn't share. Like I've always been this way. Like,
Yeah.
and I do feel as a genetic component, whether someone's
Mm.
blessed with a talent, like I'm so transparent. And it's funny because people will be like, come up to me sometimes. They'd be like, "Oh, that story you told about your girl and your family it helped me so much." I'm like, "Who are you?" And like, "What are you talking about?" Because I literally let it out and I forget about it. And I
Yeah.
think that's a way of me dealing with everything that happens.
Yeah.
And I don't hold on to it. And
Mm.
because I share it, I kind of let it go at the same time. But I don't know where this came from. I had zero clue why feel so comfortable sharing such like, and even in the book, there's some intimate shit in there. That I'm like, I probably shouldn't be telling people this, but I think if you don't, that's well, first of all, when you do share that, when you're vulnerable, it allows other people to be vulnerable around you. So it allows that comfort where they'll share with you. But I also feel like there's so many people who are trying to be something,
Hmm.
and there's a lack of authenticity. And I think growing up in like the area I grew up in around like the emergence of hip hop,
Mm.
there was this rawness to hip hop. Like if you look at the music, early especially, I'm not discrediting the rappers now, but early hip hop, it was very raw. It was like this is what we're dealing with every day.
Mm.
And I grew up around that. And I feel like the kids I grew up around, there was this, if you don't really live this life and you can't say you're about it, right? Like the gangbangers were really shooting at each other. The drug dealers were real, like everyone's really doing the things they said. So I've always felt this draw to like that authenticity where if I'm going to talk about something, I've probably lived it already multiple times. And I'm not just going to pull a subject out of, a book and say, hey, look at this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I did it. And then here's my interpretation of it. And to your point, or your question, I have zero idea where it all came from other than hip hop, I think was one of the links to it.
Yeah. And you know what? I think one of the things that I love about being vulnerable and being open is that it's relatable. And like you said, when one person opens up, it's more likely that another person will feel comfortable opening up. And I've had so many experiences where I've been the first to go, so to speak. I've been the first to open up, and then somebody else brings something, and it forms this really meaningful moment where you realize, like, hey, I'm not alone in what I'm going through. Like we might not be going through the same exact struggle right now, but we're both dealing with some pretty tough stuff. And like, I feel better knowing that somebody else is there too, you know?
Yeah, it's a wild thing. And I'll tell you, we just had 4th of July, and for my family, like this whole tradition of 4th of July has been huge. And this year we had it at my house, and the end of the night, I'll remember this moment for the rest of my life. We sat down around the fire pit, and it was my parents, my cousins, younger cousins, my aunts, uncles, everyone sat around. And I just started with like thanking my parents and the older generation for setting the foundation so we can have what we have today. Like we can be who we are because they set the foundation. They went through the struggle for us. And then all of a sudden just opened this can of worms where everyone started sharing to the point my 16-year-old cousin was like, I just want to thank the women in the family for making me feel strong. Like, she just went on and started sharing, and she's
Aw.
16. Like she let off some like deep stuff. And I was like,
Mm.
wow, like what a powerful moment for everyone who's sitting there, for our family as a whole. And like to what you're saying, like because I shared first, it just allowed everyone else to be like, oh, he said that. He's the one who owns the house. He's unfortunately in my family, I'm the bigger, like even physical, I'm the biggest physical person in my family. So like for me to be vulnerable, just gives everyone else the green light to be like, oh, well, if he shared, game on, you know? So it was great. It really was an amazing moment for our family.
That's a really special moment. With that being said, Chris, I think part of being vulnerable means pursuing hard things and sharing the ups and especially the downs. And I know for a fact you've done some difficult things in your life. So the next question I want to ask is, what's the hardest thing that you've ever done on purpose that you've chosen, and why have you done that thing?
All right. So I still know why I did it, and I'm still figuring it out. And it's been like a traumatic moment, and it's been super tough. But one of the hardest things I ever did was leave the school I worked at, Westfield, which you were at, as a head athletic trainer. I was there 8 years, 8.5 years, or something like that. I was entrenched in the community. Like I loved the community. I loved all the kids, like people like yourself. I just reached out to DJ 4B, Bobby McKeon. He did a song with Shaq, like crazy, right? Like these kids were amazing and the experience was great. But there was a part of me that was like, I need to do something else. Like I felt like I maxed out my ability at that moment in that time for who I was and who I wanted to be at that moment. And this is like 5 years ago now. And Sandy, who was my boss at the time, was like my best friend and my mentor. And she gave me this opportunity, like at 24 years old, to be a Puerto Rican male, to come into a Westfield and with zero experience, and her giving me this opportunity to run this school, which is a very prestigious position. She gave me she took a huge chance on me. Yeah. And then for some odd years later, for me to be like, hey, I don't want it no more. I just felt like I was letting her down on so many levels, letting the kids down, letting the parents down, letting my parents down, because I had the job with the benefits, the 401k, the pension plan, the this, the that, the security, all that stuff. To walk away from what everyone perceives as the pinnacle of a job. I just needed to, and it was hard. And I told Sandy, instead of like, people give a 4 weeks notice or whatever, I gave her a 6-month notice. I told her in the wintertime so that we could start planning my predecessor, because I respected and honored her and the position that much. Why I did it, I still can't give you a full answer. Every year, I feel like there's other reasons. And I think when I strip it all back and I'm brutally honest, a lot of it was just ego at the time. Like I wanted to be something. I thought I was going to, all these people were coming to me for speeches and presentations, and I thought they wanted me. Turns out a lot of it was because of the positional power. And you only learn that lesson when you leave, right? So people were like, oh, can you do this for us and that? And I was like, oh, I got so many opportunities. I'm turning opportunities down. I don't have time because I'm at the school. Not realizing the school is the reason why so many people wanted me to do these things, because they wanted that name behind it. It wasn't me. It was the position. It was the whatever that held for them. But yeah, letting it go, man, it was tough. And it's just something internally I just needed to do. And I can't explain fully. Like you had that gut feeling that like, this isn't for me. Not at that time anyway. I didn't have any kids. There was no reason for me to need all that stability. Now it's a different situation, because it's like, my kid gets sick. It's like, do we have a health plan? Do we have, that's a whole different conversation. But at that time, I needed to leave. And to walk away from that was difficult, like so hard to have that conversation and to leave all the perks, everything that came with it, man. It was a tough thing. And again, to this day, there's layers of reasons why I had to do it. And I can't fully put my finger on the one that was the thing.
Yeah. I mean, just to your point, Chris, you were a big part of my high school experience. Like, granted, I played sports all year round. I spent a lot of time around the athletic trainers, and I don't know what it was. Like you added your own character and personality into the program, into, as every day there was this positivity, there was this wisdom, there was this friend that all of the athletes had in the training room. I can't tell you how many laughs I had just like at football practice, before, after, during. And then to hear that you left after I had graduated high school, I was just curious, why you had left and what you were up to. And obviously, you were doing your own thing at the time, training clients and building things and growing on social media and otherwise. And it's so interesting for me, just on a personal level, to know that at the time you didn't know really why or what you were doing necessarily. And it's so interesting that as you've gotten further and further away now in a timeline perspective, that you've understood maybe different aspects of why that might have happened. Do you look back ever and have any regret about leaving, or is regret not a word that you feel like applies at all?
No, I 100% have regret. The biggest regret being financially, right? Like
Yeah.
if you think about the money structure in the school system, you keep on buying into the pension and there's retirement and all those financial parts.
Yeah.
But again, at the time I didn't have kids. So now like when my kid has to go see the doctor, like there's different health plans and a school health plan is a great one.
Yeah.
So those are the times where it really stands out, or when we have to make a financial decision and I'm not making the finances I used to make. It's like, yeah, I used to have X, Y, and Z capital to pay for things. And so that's the main regret, is just financial. As far as like a personal growth, I don't regret it because it's so funny, man. Like I look at certain people that are, like you said about mentors, and I've never met Dave Chappelle in my life, right? But walking away from $50 million when he did, and for just a moral standpoint and the reason why he did it, my walking away wasn't anywhere near that. But it was at a crossroads where I felt like I wasn't growing anymore. Like there was no position for me to go to without doing more schooling and reaching another position. There was nowhere for me to grow in that space. I was the top person in that field, right, in that moment. And I just felt like I needed to grow in some other ways. And sometimes the best way to grow is to put yourself in a disadvantage, or to purposely put yourself in a new space where it's like, all right, now you figure it out. Now you did all this, you had the comfort, now figure this out on your own. And I'm the type of person where I need to get burned to know the fire's hot. I need it. Like you can't tell me it's going to be hard over here at me. Like, yeah, and listen, I need to like actually feel it. And that's part of my personality, part of the way I learn. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I have to touch it. I have to play with it. I have to know in order to, so I had to experience this to know, it was tough. And I think the biggest or the hardest thing is losing the relationship with the kids. Like I go back for per diem work and I don't know any of the kids. I think your sister was she still in school when I left? I think she was maybe a senior or a junior or something.
Yeah. What year did you leave again?
I left in, geez, now 16, maybe something like that.
She might
17.
have been a junior. Yeah.
So I think I left, like, and the kids like that. Like I knew your sister since she was like in 7th grade. I think I met her, right? So that not be there when she, played varsity and did the things she did as a senior. It's tough, man. You really do form a bond with these kids, and you have a vested interest in their success. So to walk away was tough for kids like that. Again, from knowing you and knowing your brother, it was like, I want to be there for all the Rinaldis now, all of them, And I actually had a parent approach me and say, like, would I do another year just for their kid? And I was like, it's kind of selfish. Like, would you pay me for another year? Like, you just want me to stay so your kid can have a great senior year, which was interesting. It was interesting. But yeah, I missed that. The 2 regrets would probably be financial and also losing those relationships with those kids, because they are special to me to this day still.
Absolutely. And, I still remember this one moment in the training room in the high school in the 2nd floor. I was getting ready to go off to college. Maybe it was a couple months before senior year ended. And you had this, I don't know what it was. It was a stick. It was like a broomstick or a bar. And I don't know how this came up, but you held it to the ground and you were like, step over this. And I stepped over it. And then you like raised it up a couple inches. You were like, step over it. And I like took a bigger step, and then you raised it up higher. You're like, step over it. And I jumped, and you were like, as life changes, as you go to new levels, you have to change your approach. And that was your lesson that you left me off with as I went to college. And it still sticks with me to this day. So just know that you've definitely left a lasting impact on everybody that you interacted with there. And I think that could be easy to overlook at times, like as you move away from that season of your life and other people move in their own directions, to like, remember what the time you had with those people, but forget about the potential impact that continues with everybody like myself. So question for you, Chris, is after you left, what did that look like for you immediately after you left that position? What were you up to on a day to day?
Uh, First, it was quiet, and that's the only way I can describe it. It's just silence. It's just there's no one there. There's no immediate urge to go back to work. There's just this moment of now it's just you. So it's a lot of fear in that moment for sure, because the unknown, like you don't know what's going to happen next. But I was busy trying to build a business, at that time, we were trying to push Rudy's rehab. So I was like, all right, let's put a lot of energy into that. But that was literally, I think, season or schools ends in June.
Yeah.
Then on July 4th, I find out Nicole's pregnant.
Mm.
So there wasn't much time for me to go full hustle mode and full grind, because it was like, all right, now we got to get prepared for a baby.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a lot of time to really digest it, because it went right from that to having a kid. And then like, what am I going to do for this child? And I got consumed with that. So I didn't have a lot of time, but the immediate thing was just silence. And I think the same thing happens. I was talking to a friend of mine, when you reach a goal in life, when you reach a moment where you're like, I've been pursuing this thing, and that day happens, the day after is some of the darkest for a lot of people, because it's now what? That's the question I was asking myself. Now what? You asked for this, now you're going to go after it. And I did pursue things, and some of it didn't pan out the way you expected. But I think you kept taking steps forward. And where I'm going to end up, I don't know. The book came out, and that's doing what it's going to do. And I'm pursuing things in my own way, but I just hate the sticky marketing and like the cheesy kind of. It works. The blueprint does work. I'm not going to knock it. But it's hard for me, again, with that hip hop mindset. I want to do things my way. And maybe it's ego, maybe it's ignorance, maybe it's a mixture of the two. But that's after that moment, that's the biggest thing, was just that silence. I'll never forget that silence.
Yeah. When did the noise come back? When you had your son?
The noise has not stopped since then. I think because I didn't leave with nothing to fall back on. I left with, I'm still an adjunct professor at the college. I still had my business. I still work for Animal Flow. And I think I want to say around that time, they had offered me a trip to go to Taiwan for like a week or 2 weeks. So as soon as you get back into the hustle and bustle, the noise came back right away, and I was still doing stuff. It just wasn't the steady salary, the 9 to 5. It was kind of gigs here and there, almost like a musician or an artist, where you get gigs, you'll make a significant amount of money, and then you may not make money again for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, versus the every 2-week paycheck coming in. So yeah, it came back pretty quick for me.
Yeah. And now I think one other important thing that you said is you don't know exactly where you want to go, right? You don't know what the end goal is, or if there even is an end goal. And I think that's really honest and something that I can relate to, because people ask me all the time. I left my full-time job a year ago, started Project Endure. To be completely honest, I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. A year later, I still have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm getting more clear as time goes on, but I still don't know 5 years, 10 years. And beyond that is a huge question mark. But I have this feeling, and I think for me, it's this feeling of like, I want to be present for the people that matter in my life. I want to be a great father someday. I want to be a great husband, a great friend, brother, son, etc. I want to create a ripple effect, I guess, with the way that I live, right? I want, maybe in an egotistical way, maybe not, I want everybody who I interact with to be just a little bit better than before we met. And I think those two things are the biggest things. And like how I do that, I don't know. Could I be a barista someday at a Starbucks and make people smile every day? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. So for you, like, is it hard to grapple with maybe not having a specific thing that you're working toward as an end goal? Or do you find a sense of freedom in not having that?
I think it's a little bit of both in my case, where there's days where it's like it's working, right? You have that interaction with someone, you have that conversation, maybe someone says, "Hey, I want to hire you to speak," right? And you're like, "Wow, this is working. This is it." And those days are wonderful and those days are special. And then there's the days where someone's like, "Well, what are you going to do when your kid goes to college?" My kids are 4 and 2. And then like it's like a slap in the face. Like, I don't know. Like, so many other people have a set plan. They're like, "Well, I'm making whatever the money may be. I'm investing this much every month. They'll have this much by the time." Like, they have it all figured out in their mind. And for me, it's like that. I don't feel like life works that way. I don't feel like that's the thing. I feel like the beauty of waking up every day, somehow not knowing what may happen that day,
Yeah.
is what makes you, like you said before, being present for these people. Um, and having little ones, you start to see how important that presence is. There's not a paycheck you can give to it. There's not a price tag you can put on that you're just there with your kids. I'm not being paid to just sit there and play with them a matching game or give them a bath every night. No one pays me for that, but to them, those moments are going to matter.
Mm.
And so I find some solace in the fact that I think those moments, those small things that may not be much, are going to matter significantly when they get older, because I only have this time now.
Yeah.
And do you remember Owen Murray?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
So one of the things his mom told me, I used to train his mom, and she said something. She's like, "You're either going to pay now or pay later.
Mm.
Either you're going to have to put the time in now with your children when they're young and spend the time, or later on, you're going to spend the money and the time because they're going to be effed up and you're going to be bailing them out and having to do so much for them." So when she said that, it really struck a chord with me. Like, you know what? I'm paying now. And it's not a bad way, right? I don't like, it's not like I'm in a prison with my kids. I love spending time with them, but I think investing the time now and not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing if it's going to pan out the way you thought.
Mm.
Things keep happening in my life that I'm like, things I wanted, but to say manifestation or whatever, have happened. They didn't happen the way I thought they would or what they would look like, but they still happened. And so those moments give you that belief and that urge to continue moving forward. But I think someone like yourself, man, like what you're doing is beautiful. Like, you're really trying to empower people, and you never know who listens to this stuff, right? So many motivational people or inspirational people say, "If I can help one person, I did my job." Well, if that was the case, everyone would be retired, right? Because I'm sure you talked to some kid who told you a week later, "Oh my God, you changed my life," right? So I think that what you're doing is special and it's unique, and people like us are built to endure, to go through the struggle, to not have it all figured out so that other people can find confidence in us,
Mm.
uh, that they may not have in themselves, or belief in us that they may not have in themselves, until hopefully one day they'll believe in their own abilities.
I think sometimes people need someone to believe in them before they believe in themselves, like you said. And I think that's a really powerful skill, to be able to see something in somebody that they can't see in themselves. And with that being said, you mentioned the word. So what does the word endurance mean to you, Chris?
From it has so many different meanings, and to me it's very similar to the word movement. That you can't put it in a box, you can't define it as just this one thing, right? A movement could be so many things. So I think endure, to be able to endure stuff, it's not just the fact that you were able to do something. For me, to endure is like you can continue doing it without a specific outcome in mind.
Mm.
It's almost like really enduring the journey, being able to like get beat up and still move forward. And again, to what we were talking about, you may not know what the end goal is, but there's something inside you that says keep moving forward,
Yeah.
keep taking that next step, keep taking next step, keep taking that next step. And you might be getting your butt kicked, you may be beaten up, you may be exhausted, you may be tired, but there's something telling you to take another step. And I think that's the ability to endure, and or to have that endurance, because this journey of life, it's not a race. We're all going to get to the same place somehow. We just don't know how we're getting there. And if we can get there on our own terms, and someone can look back at your life and say, "Wow, Joe really did it his way, man. Like, he was able to endure all the criticism, able to endure all the naysayers, able to endure the good times too, and not get too high on those, and still stood to who he was, still maintain his character. I think that's the ability to endure, and is not an easy task by any stretch of the imagination.
It's not easy at all, but to me, it's worth it. And I think you brought up something for the first time ever on this podcast. When I asked that question, you mentioned the good times too. I would love to hear a deeper thought process on what it means to endure the good times and to not get too high, because I think that is such an under discussed topic that is so important when it comes to performance, but also just to life in general, not getting too high.
Well, I'll tell you exactly, like when I was at the high school, and I'll give you the exact number. I was making at that year 72,000 for the school, right? And then I had Animal Flow. I was doing Flow Fitness. I got to the point where I was like 140 for the year with between the 5 jobs I was working. And it was this moment where you're like, yo, I'm the man. Like everybody wants me. I'm crushing life. I'm doing it. And you get too high on that horse and you forget that it's because of the work. It's because of at that time talking about movement, talking about mobility, talking about range of motion, looking at the whole body. It was the work I was putting in that allowed me that level of success. Now, if I got just caught up in the name and the success, you're going to fizz out because that's not what's giving you the credibility and the notoriety. Notoriety wasn't coming because I was a model, right? It wasn't like that type of profession. It was because I was saying something that was new to the field. I was saying things that people weren't talking about at that time anyway. I was talking about mindset, motivation, and how that it intertwines. So I kept doing the work, even though the notoriety and the stuff was there. I think people, when the notoriety and the success comes, they forget about the work and the craft, and they go right to well, I'm popular. Let me do the popular thing. This now people are talking about dancing on TikTok. So if you see me doing salsa dances or whatever on TikTok, that's not my craft. So I can't do that. I'm so honed in on my craft of movement and being a better practitioner that it didn't matter that I had this. The thing was the craft. And so I stayed true to the craft. And when you stay true to the game, it's going to have its ups and downs. And when the highs come, it's great. When everybody wants you and everybody talks to you, it's great. The money's there, it's great. But if you're really true to your practice, whatever that may be, there's going to be, you can't get caught up in the hype, because then you'll change your practice and you'll start becoming what whoever they is, you become who they want, because you don't want to lose that fame, that fortune, that whatever it is. And to the ability to endure, you have to go through that success and lose it, in my opinion, lose it to then say, oh, I really love this thing, because I was able to endure the low of it when no one was talking to me. No one cared about movement. No one cared about fascial slings, anatomy trains. No one cared about the joint by joint approach and how the body moves. No one cared. Then everybody was on me like, tell me more. And then people forgot about it again, but I'm still doing it. And so that to me is be able to endure the highs and the lows and really fall in love with your practice and your own journey.
Man, so beautiful, man. I love that. Now to pivot a little bit as we head toward the end of this conversation, you're a father. So I've been framing this question differently to different people, but essentially, everybody's going through something, and odds are there's somebody listening to this podcast who's going through something really, really challenging in life. Could look very, very different on the surface from person to person, but odds are people are feeling some kind of way. And I want you to almost imagine that someday your sons are going through something tough and they'll have the ability to listen back to this segment of the podcast. So you're talking to them now. So they're going through something tough and they just don't know what to do. They're stuck. They're confused. They're lost. They're frustrated. They're down. What do you say to them?
That's a heavy one.
Yeah.
There's two things I think I would want them to know, or want anyone to know. First, especially just coming from a man's standpoint and me raising 2 men, 2 boys who will be men one day, is that it's okay to ask for help. it's okay to lean on the people around you, your friends, your family, because chances are they've been through that same thing. So it's perfectly fine to say, man, I can't continue on. Like I need someone to give me some guidance. And that's all right. Like that's not a sign of weakness. That's not a sign of quitting. That's not a sign of whatever you may think it is your ego's telling you. It's a sign of strength to say, I need help through this next phase of whatever it is I'm going through. So I think that's important. The other thing, and I don't know why I remember this from Batman, and it's one that I think Harvey Dent said that the day is darkest before the dawn, or whatever it is, the night is darkest before the dawn. And I think when the times are the toughest, that's when it's most important to endure and keep moving forward, because chances are, and most times, this thing will pass. Whatever it is going to pass. And on the other side of it's going to be something magical and special. But you've got to keep moving forward. I don't think giving up in this life is an option. So those are the two things. Ask for help and just keep moving forward.
Man, so good. Nobody's quoted Batman ever before. Harvey Dent, man. I just not.
Was that him? I think it was him. I can't remember. I just remember that line for some reason. It sticks out.
It was either him or the butler. And I'm sure there's somebody listening to this podcast, like rolling their eyes, like, come on, guys. Like, obviously the butler. It's obviously, I don't know. But either way, it's the truth. And so with that being said, Chris, if people want to learn more about you, if people want to follow along, see what you're up to, support you in any way, where's the best place for people to find you?
At this point, the best place is Instagram. It's FLO_fitness. I have my Linktree, which I just signed up for, which is bizarre. I just did a Linktree literally 2 days ago. And that has the access to the book and some of the other stuff I have going on with Animal Flow. Or if you have like direct questions, you want to have conversation, it's flofitness@gmail.com. You can message me and we can talk more about whatever it is you need to talk about.
Awesome. Chris, well, thank you so much. This conversation was really special to me, and I appreciate you a whole lot.
Dude, I appreciate you. And I got to tell you, from a dad standpoint, from an athletic trainer standpoint, I'm so proud of all the work you've done. I'm proud of the man you've become after all these years and stuff you've done. And this Endure thing is something special, man. So I hope you continue with it.
I absolutely will, Chris. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Endure podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Endure Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.